You know, finding gold is an amazing opportunity. It's something that you can feel great about, that you can get outdoors and do, but is prospecting really worth it? You know, there's a bunch of traps and problems and mistakes that a lot of newer guys make, even some older guys make. And we're going to talk about, is prospecting worth it? How to avoid those traps and what you need to know to succeed. Hey, I'm Chris Ralph, the professional prospector, and today we're talking about some certain things that I think you'll find very interesting. Now, I get messages all the time from prospectors, some of which are brand spanking new. They just want to start how to get involved. Other guys that have some experience, maybe not huge amounts, but some, and some with more experience. But I get a lot of letters from new guys that want to find out, what do they need to know to be successful prospecting? What are the traps that they should avoid? And the other day I got a great letter and I thought, boy, this has a lot of information in it, because I wrote a response. I respond to all my messages. And in fact, if you watch this video and you think that I've left out something important or I haven't quite covered it just right or something else needs to be said, then send me a comment because I answer all my comments and I'll be happy to discuss it with you. Now, I got this letter and I really gave the guy frank and honest answers. I'm not here to feed you guys a line of baloney or, that kind of stuff. I'm going to tell you, give it to you straight. And so I thought this letter was good and that it might be helpful to you guys. And so you come along with me and let's go over it together. Okay, so here's the letter I received. I'm going to read it. Almost every show by prospectors is done by people who are making worthwhile money off the ads and other stuff that they sell, not from mining or prospecting for gold on their claims. Nearly every show has prospectors going places where others have already found gold, and usually found gold, the old timers found it and they're just going back and picking up the crumbs. I've only seen one woman working in Western Australia who's finding enough to actually make a good living. The rest could make better and quicker money by working at McDonald's flipping burgers. I want to find gold and make good money for my family. How did all the early prospectors find those virgin gold fields? Well, what can I really look for to find gold? I found a vein of quartz that was loaded with pyrite and mica and other minerals. What should I do? Well, let's go over those and maybe a few other items that will really help you understand. Now, I did write a written response to this guy and he certainly can respond to me through that, but if he wants to respond in the comments, great. He had some other issues that he wanted to talk about and I talked about those. Those were more private or whatever. I didn't want to share that with you guys, but the good stuff I want to go over. So the first thing he said was that he really wanted to make some good money for himself and his family, that he wanted to get out and prospect and find some good gold and make some good money. It kind of implied in his letter better than he would make if he were flipping burgers at McDonald's. But to be honest, especially as a new prospector with little or no experiences, your chance of making big money, I'm not talking about their chance of finding a few pickers or a nice little nugget and getting started finding some flakes and finds. No, I'm talking about making big money. Your chances of finding that kind of stuff is pretty much near zero. Prospecting is a skill and what you know makes a difference. And like any other skill, it takes time and effort to learn. If you're into fishing or golfing or hunting or whatever, you don't learn how to catch fish overnight. You just don't buy a boat and a fishing rod and suddenly you're an expert fisherman. Same thing, you don't buy a set of golf clubs and suddenly you're a scratch golfer. It takes time to learn any skill, whether it's a professional skill, plumbing or electricians. They don't just buy a tool and suddenly they're an expert. It takes time to learn. And the same thing with gold prospecting. It takes time to learn. Now, one of the things that I often have to tell guys, especially new guys, is that gold is rare. And sometimes people tell me, no, gold isn't rare. It's all over the place. Well, I'm talking about significant amounts. I'm not talking about some tiny trace or 2 tiny specks that you found because you went out all day and dug. I'm talking about significant amounts of gold are rare. That's why it's $2,000 plus US or over $3,000 Australian, depending, the price goes up and down, but that's why the price is so high, because it's rare and hard to get hold of. Big miners mine rock that has, less than a half a gram per ton of rock, and they process it very cheaply and are able to make money doing that. And so, you gotta think that gold is rare. You're not gonna, if you have the expectation that you're just gonna walk out in any gold field and suddenly you're just gonna be picking up nuggets and you're gonna go home with $10,000 worth of gold. I had a guy one time that sent me an email. He was going to sell everything he had and move to Alaska, and he was going to a stream where there was gold, and he figured it'd be easy for him to pick up a half an ounce a day on average. Some days he figured he'd do better, some days worse, right? An average of half an ounce a day. And I told the guy, I says, have you ever gone out to find gold before? And of course he hadn't. That's why he figured half an ounce a day was a good average. And at today's prices, hey, $1,000 a day. Who among us wouldn't like a job outdoors for $1,000 a day? I don't know if I talked that guy out of, selling everything he had and moving to Alaska or not, but I've seen guys who sold what they had or sold a lot of stuff and bought dredging equipment back in the day when dredging was legal in California, and they'd never found gold before, and they went out, maybe 1 or 2 guys or 3 or 4, and they worked real hard and found they were making way less than minimum wage. Again, better off flipping burgers, right? So gold is rare, so don't set your expectations too high. That's one of the traps that I want to go over with you. Now, one of the things that this guy who wrote me this letter, he said he'd found a quartz vein. What should he do? Well, okay, this is another thing I have to tell a lot of people, is that quartz is the most common mineral on the surface of the earth. There are mountains of quartz. There are valleys of quartz. There are piles of quartz. There are veins of quartz. There's lots of quartz. It's made of the 2 most common elements. If you take the 2 most common elements in the Earth's crust, silicon and oxygen, and you put them together, you get quartz. So, since it's the 2 most common elements, it's the most common mineral that's formed from the most common element. Gold, on the other hand, is one of the rarest minerals in the Earth's crust. There are some that are rarer than gold, for sure, but it's among the rarest. So if you the rarest group, gold would be among that group. There's not lots and lots and loads of gold. That's why it's so expensive. But quartz veins are common. They're way more common than most people think. Not that there's quartz veins everywhere, there's not, but there's loads and loads and loads of quartz veins that have little tiny bit or no gold at all. Gold veins with good amounts quartz veins with good amounts of gold in them, they're a little rare. How do you know the difference? Well, you got to go out and sample. You go out, you take some samples, you crush them up, whether that's with a mortar and pestle, or you can find somebody who's got a crusher you can borrow, something. You crush them up and you pan the sample, or you have it fire assayed. A lot of guys are hesitant to pay to have fire assays done. I have them done all the time. So you have a fire assay done, or you crush and pan it. You see, have you got a lot of gold? Have you got any gold? You can answer those questions once you have the sample results. I just recently did a video on testing quartz, and you might want to look at that one. I'll put a link to it above and down in the description down below. But there are finds made sometimes of quartz that's significant. About 20 or 25 years ago, over in California, in the Mother Lode country, there was a couple of guys decided to go out and go hunting. They were hunting deer. And one of the guys was not local, but one of the guys was. The local guy who had, said, hey, this is the place we want to go hunting for deer, because I think we'll find one or two. That guy said to his partner, his friend, said, hey, look, we're in gold country. Keep your eyes open just in case you find something. Look for quartz, the white, and if you find some with metallic gold in it, it's possible. Not likely, but it's possible. Well, his friend went out and he was wandering around looking for deer, and by gum, he spotted this chunk of quartz about the size of a big cantaloupe. And by gum, it had gold all shot through it. And I saw the piece, and I think they estimated it had 20-something ounces of gold in it. It was mostly quartz, but still, a piece this big, it had a lot of quartz, or a lot of gold in it. And so finds like that are made, but they're not common. I know that the two hunters went back up to the same spot and looked all over trying to find more of that stuff. That was the only piece they found. So, maybe there is some in the area. Maybe it rolled downhill. Who knows how it got there, but it wasn't sitting in the middle of a giant quartz deposit that was just chock full of gold that somehow the old timers missed. Now, speaking of old timers, another question that this guy asked was, how did the early prospectors find gold? They found all these virgin gold fields, and a lot of times they tended to be at the same kind of time frame. Like one guy would find some, and then other guys would find some nearby, and then other guys in the general area. The truth is that the early prospectors found gold because they were the first in that area to test and look for gold. Now, you'd say, well, what happens is, usually when the strikes are made, it's that area is on the fringe of civilization when the strike is made. So when gold was found in 1848 in the rivers in California, when it was first discovered, that was the edge of civilization. I mean, those guys that had gone up there, Marshall went up to build a sawmill and gone up to build this sawmill, and it was kind of the edge of civilization. It was kind of just beyond where people lived. And so he kind of went up into the mountains because that's where the lumber was, right? He was going to cut lumber and deliver finished lumber down to Sutter down in the Sacramento area. So, he was kind of on the fringe of civilization. He made this discovery. And then once he found it, more and more people went out and found it. It's same in Australia, in Eastern Australia, in Victoria, and some of the other areas in the eastern part of Australia. When gold was first found, those areas were kind of the fringe of civilization. When gold was found in Western Australia, early in the 1900s, Western Australia is very dry and remote, and there wasn't a lot of services or anything, and you had to be super careful when you went out into the wilds that you didn't run out of water and food and just die, because if you were too far gone to make it back, there's nothing you could do. If your horse broke a leg and you had to hike back, you were in trouble. So they went in groups. That's why. So the old timers made these discoveries because they were the first on the scene. And unfortunately, we're like 100, 150 years too late for that. But you can count that there's always a little bit of gold. None of the old timers got 100%. They always left some because they went after the easy stuff first. And that's one of the things that I advise people to. Go after the easiest gold first. If you've got different things, go after the best and easiest stuff first. That's what the old timers did. Now, another question that I got asked was, what indicator should I look for? What can I really look for to find gold? And that's another thing that I tell prospectors. There's not any one indicator that will help you find gold all the time. People will say, well, trumpet plants. And when I went to Australia, there were other plants that were... Basically, the plants are indicators of mineralized soil. It doesn't necessarily indicate that there's gold there. It's just that the soil is a little more mineralized and the plants like that kind of soil, and so they tend to grow there. But whether there's gold there or not, that just depends. It may not. And a lot of other indicators are like that. Some indicators will work in some places and not in others. And some indicators, aren't even present. You can go out to parts of Nevada and there isn't a trumpet plant for 50 miles or 100 miles or more. But there's gold. But other parts, the trumpet plant does kind of correlate okay with it. But there's other things, favorable rock types, now it changes. The favorable rock type is not just one rock type good for everywhere. It's different types of rocks in different types of places. But most gold districts have a favorable rock type. This is hard rock districts. Will have favorable rock types. And if you learn what the favorable rock type is, that can help you find gold. In fact, just myself, I was looking through stuff this time of year. I do a lot of claim research and research of places that I want to prospect in the near future. And I did some research and found an area in Nevada that's volcanic rocks. And there were some gold properties and gold deposits associated with bleached and altered rocks. These are rocks where there's been circulation of hot water through the rock as a whole. It's deposited some pyrite. A lot of times the water that's circulated is heavily acidic and it basically bleaches and alters the rock. And the area that I'm looking at, I'm going to go out and sample is one of those, but there's others around there. And then there's other areas near there that have that kind of bleached and altered rock. It's like, hey, I should go look in those places too, not just where the old timers dug. And that's a hint. You learn what the favorable rock type is, where the gold occurs, you can go there and check it out. For placers, a lot of times heavy rocks, heavy pebbles, black sand, that kind of thing. Heavy materials indicate that heavy materials have accumulated there. And gold certainly is a very heavy material, and it does accumulate in places. In hard rock, there's a lot. Pyrite is a lot of times a pretty decent indicator of gold. If you have more interest in just finding out about pyrite, which is also sometimes called fool's gold, I did a video on that, and I'm going to put a little link to it up here, put it down in the description as well. So wherever you are, there are indicators for whatever you're doing. You just have to learn what they are. They're not all the same everywhere. They're not the same if you're doing placer versus hard rock. There are indicators. Just pay attention and learn what they are. Study. You'll find what they are for your area. Now, to be successful, what is the key to success? And in all honesty, this is one of the biggest things that's the key to success in prospecting, but it's the key to success in a lot of other things too. It's patience. It's perseverance. A lot of guys, they get out, they have high expectations, they find that searching for gold is not easy, that they're, not get nearly as much as they expected, and so they get discouraged. They discover it's not easy, that it's difficult, that it's a skill that has to be learned, that it's an experience that one has to grow into. And they just give up. And then that's it. They're done. It ain't easy like they thought. And so they're done with the whole idea of prospecting. And it's the guys who stick to it and the guys who hang around and learn and do what they need to do to learn. Those are the guys that become successful. It just takes time. The whole thing is a journey, and you have to enjoy the journey. You have to enjoy being able to get out into the backcountry, whether it's the desert or the forest or the jungle, for that matter. Wherever you go, enjoy getting out. Enjoy the experience. If you're out there with other people, enjoy the company of the other folks. Enjoy what you're doing. And then, if you have a bad day for gold, or even if you have a string of bad days, even if you've never had a good day, you'll enjoy the process and enjoy the journey. So have a good attitude, be patient, be persistent, and enjoy the journey as you go along. You know, it's a process, the journey is a process of learning and gaining more skills. And the truth is, no one ever reaches that point where you know it all. Okay? There's always more to be learned. You know, for me, I've been doing this for more than 40 years. For me, I have a degree from a university that says I'm a mining engineer. I've got experience. I've read all kinds of scientific papers. I know a lot, but there's nowhere near that I know everything. There's lots for me to still learn. And you know, every time I come into contact with an experienced prospector, I always try to learn something from that guy. You know, there's something to be learned. I want to try and learn what it is. And I got to tell you that I've learned things from guys who don't have a degree, have some experience, and have found a lot of gold. There's always, you know, thoughts and ideas and hints that are going to help you be better at what you're doing. So when you come into more experienced guys, you know, look around and see what you can learn. That's what I do. I always try to be learning. Always try to be learning. The next big question that I get is, where should I look? Where should I go? You know, I live in New York City. Where can I go to find gold within 10 miles of my apartment? It's like the jewelry store. The truth is, not every place is equal. There's gold deposits here and there in a lot of places. There's certainly gold deposits in the eastern U.S. There's gold deposits in the western U.S. The Midwest is kind of, you know, the upper Midwest has gold that's been brought down by glaciers from Canada. But there's not gobs of gold everywhere. And that's just something that you need to know. But if you live in a place that got some gold, or you can get to, you know, maybe if you live someplace, you know, maybe you live in New York City, you're willing to drive a ways. That's great. You go on vacation someplace else, in a place you can go get gold. That's good. Learn those places and study. And, you know, there's all kinds of books out there. Gold deposits of Alaska, gold districts of California, placer deposits of Nevada, placer deposits of Arizona. There's lots of different books like that are out there that you can read and help you find, you know, good places. And a lot of times those books will give you hints about favorable rock types, what you should look for in that district. You know, always be learning, and be learning by studying. Study, you know, some books. There's books out there that can help you. Now, there's another suggestion that I have, and that's my unpopular suggestion. What do I recommend to people that, well, some people accept this. Some people, you know, when I recommend it, they say, no, that's a good idea. I think I'll try that. But a lot of people say, no, I don't want to do that. That's you know, and my unpopular suggestion for guys that are either new or, you know, with limited experience and want to get better and want to find a place where they can go find gold, my unpopular suggestion is to join a club. There's prospecting clubs all over the U.S. and in other places too. Join a club and, you know, get to know some folks. Don't decide for yourself, well, nobody in that club knows anything. You know, I want to be by myself. I don't like people. Learn to get along with folks. That's a key to life, not necessarily to prospecting. It works for prospecting, but it works for life in general. Learn to get along with folks. Most clubs are always looking for volunteers to help out one way or another. And so if you jump in with both feet, you know, you're going to make some friends. And then when it comes to time to look to one of those friends and say, hey, how have you been successful in finding gold? What have you done? Can you give me some secrets? Tell me places where the club has claims and what has been successful for you. You know, that kind of stuff can be really helpful. And so prospecting is you know, for getting started, I wish I would have had clubs to join. That kind of stuff didn't really exist very much when I was just getting started a long time ago. So take advantage of the opportunity. Take my unpopular suggestion. Now, decent health. That's one of the things that I want to talk about. You don't need to be like a competitive athlete or a big weightlifter or bodybuilder, that kind of stuff. You don't need that. But, you know, I've known a lot of guys that have been active prospecting and then their health declines and they're, you know, they can't get out to the field anymore. So you have to have decent health because you're going to spend time away from doctors and away from hospitals. You need to be able to get out there and, you know, and get along. And, you know, for me, I take a lot of medications, but, you know, I can take medications with me when I go out in the field. And so I got decent health without, you know, I'm not a competitive athlete, but I'm well enough that I can get out and do stuff and spend a few days, go camping out in the middle of nowhere, or go drive out to the middle of nowhere. You have to have decent health to really be successful at prospecting. Finally, you know, I want to talk about the fact that there's some costs involved. There are some costs to getting involved with prospecting. You know, it takes a bit of money to get into it. You know, you can start out with just a pan and maybe a shovel or something like that, pick or two. And I recommend that. You know, I recommend don't go out and just, even if you have lots of money, I got $5,000 to spend, so I'm going to spend it all. Don't do that. Learn first, gather knowledge, gain skill, like I'm talking about, skill of finding gold, and then start buying stuff. So start small and grow into your prospecting. Those are wise words from somebody who's been there and done that. I mean, I know a guy, here's a story. I knew a guy who really got the fever. He was into it. And he got some claims in Nevada, and there was some water on his claims. There's not a lot of placer claims with water, but he got one that had some water, and he bought a placer plant. He actually sold his house in the San Francisco Bay Area, which was, you know, he had a lot of money in his house. He had a lot of value that he had acquired over the years or had gained over the years. And he sold his house. He bought this big placer plant. He bought a bulldozer, a front end loader, some other equipment, a trailer to live in. And he got his two sons who were, I think they were late teens, early 20s, something like that, and said, let's all go gold mining. And so they got it all set up, and they, you know, worked hard. They worked an entire summer, 3 guys, and got 3 ounces. Now, the 3 ounces that they got, because this was a couple of decades ago, it wasn't even enough to pay for the diesel that they ran through their equipment, let alone pay for all their other expenses, let alone make a profit. He spent gobs of money before he knew what he was doing. He didn't really test the property. You know, it's kind of one of those things like, it's rich. Old Joe says it's rich, therefore it's got to be rich. He didn't test it, because if he'd have tested it, he'd have known that there's no way in the world he could make money on it doing a commercial operation. So, again, start small, grow into it with your skill, grow into it with your knowledge. As you learn more, you can acquire more equipment over time. It's a good observation. So that is the truth of the matter. You know, prospecting ain't easy. Finding gold ain't easy. But when you stick with it and you're patient and persistent and you learn and you grow in it, you will find gold and you can feel great about it. Because if you find pickers or nuggets or, you know, even some good flakes and small stuff, you should feel proud about that. You should feel good about it because you're learning and growing in that skill. You're getting better. Now, skills, like I say, something to be learned over time. One of the ways to learn on a skill is to learn by doing. School of hard knocks. The other way is to read some. And honestly, I recommend both. I mean, I have a book that I'm going to recommend to you, but I also recommend getting out and doing it too. Get your hands dirty, get wet, get into the situation, dig some dirt, do some stuff. My book, I wrote a book to help you gain skills faster, to advance you along the line of becoming a successful prospector. It's called Fistful of Gold, because that's what I want you to find, Fistful of Gold. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now. So this is my book, Fistful of Gold. You can see it's an encyclopedia distilling down my 45 plus years of prospecting experience plus my degree into the parts that you need to know. I spent most of 10 years writing this. It was not just a simple effort that, I sat down and wrote it. You can see it's like 250,000 words. It's not something you're going to read through in a day or maybe even a week or more. But it's got a lot of information and reference material that you can come back to. You can read it once and read it again and get more out of it because there's just that much depth of material in this. I wrote this book because I want you to have the skills to go out and find fistfuls of gold for yourself. And if you have the skills and know what you're doing and get out in the field and make a real effort, you can find significant gold. It's not easy. I'm not going to tell you that because, gold, it wouldn't be, close to $2,000 an ounce, which is what it is right now. It wouldn't be so expensive if it was easy to find. It's not easy. You just can't walk out into an old gold field and start picking up nuggets. If the gold was easy to see and find, the old timers would have picked it up and taken it themselves. So you got to have skill. You got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to master what it takes to find gold, and you've got to have the persistence and put in the effort to find the material, to find the gold or diamonds or gemstones that you're looking for. Now, this book has geology, it has facts about gold, it has stuff about diamonds and platinum, but it's mostly about gold deposits, how gold deposits form, how placer and nuggets form, all the questions you've probably wanted to ask. The book is available on Amazon, and I'll put a link to it in the description below, but you can look up on Amazon, Fistful of Gold, and by Chris Ralph, and find this book. Now, the book, if you look at it, it has a very high rating. It has like a 4.7 or 4.8 out of 5, which is really high. I mean, it's hard to please everybody, but I'm close to a 5 out of 5, not far from it, right? So it's been out. I've sold more than 15,000 copies of this book, and I've had tremendous response, tremendous positive response by the people who buy it. And I think if you buy it, you'll be just as happy with it. Now, in addition to my book, I also have a website that I do, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my website and show you some images from the website right now. Now, my website is nevadaoutbackgems.com, and I'll put a link to the prospecting page, this prospecting encyclopedia page, down in the description below, but you can find it at Nevada Outback Gems. I sell some jewelry, turquoise, other gemstones there. I don't always keep the inventory perfectly up to date, so if you're interested in anything you see, do contact me first before trying to send me money or anything, because I want you to be able to get what you order. But the website has lots of different stories, old adventures, even some stories, true stories from the old-time miners of the 1800s. So I think it's something you'll find interesting. The other thing I want to go back to is that all my comments, I want you guys to ask questions on the comments for my videos. I answer 100% of the comments that are made on my videos. Now, sometimes if somebody just says, hey, great video, I really enjoyed it, the comment may just be, well, I'm really glad you liked it. Or if it's a simple question. And sometimes I get people who ask me questions, it would take a book to answer that question. And I recommend that they just buy the book. But I answer all my questions. I try to help people as much as I can. I'm here to help you. So if you're interested in gaining the skills, if you're interested in knowing what you need to know to be successful, follow along with me. Subscribe to my channel, hit the bell so that they'll let you know when I come out with new videos, and I try to do that pretty much every Saturday morning. And you'll enjoy with me, you'll come along with me, we'll have an adventure together, and we will find some nice gold and see what it's really like getting out in the woods, or the deserts, or the mountains, wherever we land, wherever the gold is, wherever the diamonds are, wherever the platinum is. Come along, we'll have some fun. And I'll see you real soon on the next video.